All right, so we're going to talk about inserting tables in Word. Sometimes this does get problematic, but we'll try to address this right away. So uh, the first idea is that where do you find these tables, right? So you head over to the insert option right here, and you should be able to see a table option, and it lets you choose a size of your table, right? You can also draw the table and insert some specific table, and that's fine, but you can choose any size here. The good idea here is that whatever size you choose, you could always adjust it, right? So you could change different numbers of rows and columns, etc., but I'm just going to work with this specific size. I'll add rows and delete rows and columns later on. But notice one of the things you could do is you could click on this specific plus sign right here, and it selects all the rows and columns at once. And then you could head over to table layout option, and it lets you basically change different sizes of different cells and different rows and different heights, right? So one option that I can see here is that I have an option to adjust the height of this specific table, and by increasing it I can change the row height. Okay, and decreasing it, obviously it reduces the height and row. And this of course is dependent on the readability of what you are putting in these rows and columns, right? Similarly, for width, we often don't want the table to go beyond the width of the page or the text and leaking into the margins, so we want to keep the table width less than the page on or within the margins actually, right? So we could always reduce this down and make it look more presentable. But just in case you end up changing these rows and heights, such as like this, you could hold at some place and then drag them to adjust these rows and heights and their distances as per your liking. Sometimes we have some headings or some column headings, etc., here, and we might need to change for some of them. You could always do that. But remember, you always have an option to basically, in table layout, you have this option to choose distribute rows. And what that does is it, and distribute columns also, what that does is it distributes them equally, right? So based on whatever the height and the width of the entire table is, it distributes the rows and columns equally. So this is one way to basically reset the spacing or distribute them equally. We often want to do that. We often want to keep them equally distributed. It looks more presentable and honestly in a very standard format, right? So that is one idea. The next thing that and I'm just going to reduce this just for making this look slightly better. Okay, so the next idea the that I want to talk about is adding rows and columns. So you could do this at any point, right? So you could basically, if you hover your mouse over it, you could right click and insert rows above, below, columns right, left. So right, you could have additional columns set up. Similarly, if I right click on this bottom row, I can insert rows below, right? So I can add rows and columns, and at the same time I can also use this same option, right click. There's also an option for delete cells. I can use delete cells to maybe delete entire row, right? Or maybe the entire column. So this is something that I can always work with and manipulate my table columns and rows, right? So this adjusts my table size basically. The next idea is that we also want to have a title of the table, right? So maybe we could say this is table 1, depending on what table it is, and then we could say cost comparison of different flows. So then notice from the previous video, we have set up the table title to be uh, at the top, and we had the figure captions at the bottom. So this is one convention that is more often used. So have table titles on top of the table and figure captions at the bottom of the figures, right? So the other thing that I also want to talk about then is we start populating this table, right? So let's work with some example right here. For example, I could set a metric, and I could say this metric is perhaps annual cost, maybe, and this is maybe uh, annual average saving. And then, because I'm populating this, I might have to deal with the heights and widths at a later point in time. Maybe this is floor 1, this is floor 2, right? And then we have some numbers, right? I'll just populate some numbers here, some number there, etc. These are dummy numbers. I'll go ahead and remove these two columns, delete entire column, and that's my table. But then I can see right away I want to adjust the rows and heights of this. Again, I'll go to table layout, I'll fix these sizes. I want to increase the width right away, make it look slightly better, and that's about it. Often we have these headings that need more attention or more focus, so to speak. So we might want to make these headings slightly bigger and then the others same. But we can also work with this text. For example, I could select all this text and I could use some of the things I've learned before, perhaps center line everything. This center lines my table, and that's fine also. Maybe I could center align this specific part of my table. Maybe I could center align these two specifically. You might want to have them differently, but that's okay. It's basically up to you. If I select all of this text, I could also, it's a very specific layout that I'm looking for, which is, it's not grid lines, it's not this, it's not even merge. Yeah, it's this text alignment. So this kind of gives me an idea where I want the text to be positioned. Notice what happens to the text within the table only, right? So I could change the positioning of the text within the table. And something that we want to do is center this to the middle. So it's not only just centered, it's also in the middle, right between the center of each cell. And this is something that we want to do most of the times, and that is typically the convention. Control B, or a shortcut for bold, is something that we do. We bold our headings up top. We also want to bold our metrics, right? So keep only our numbers in the table without any bold, and so they are basically normally set up, right? So we've got this table set up now nicely, and this is how we mostly deal with these tables, right? Have a different row height for the headings, have equal row heights for the rest of the data, and the spirit of the table is to basically summarize information, which is what we have done for this specific example. One of the things we missed out on, and something that I do want to talk about, is merging different cells. And you could do this quite simply. For example, we've got these two cells that we might want to merge. What we could do is we could again head out to table layout and then go to the merge option, and it gives us an option to merge, right? So we could merge these two cells so that this becomes just one value, because for both of the floors, floor 1 and floor 2, we might have just one metric or one value, annual savings, which could be whatever number, right? So it often helps for us to merge different cells and come across just one value for them, right? And this is often like a comparative value, often like a summary sort of a thing. So the merge option helps us do this, right? We could also choose to split this cell, right? We could choose to split it into two columns, so that way we have two columns. Again, it's always easy to merge and split them depending on our use case.